What's up, everyone? Welcome to the February 14th edition of FanDuel Tournament Plays presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And as a reminder, you get one free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up and make a deposit at Prize Picks. Be sure to use the code Awesemo to receive a 100% first deposit bonus up to $100. Today, we're going to take a look at 5 of the top tournament options on FanDuel. We have a 9-game slate tonight, so as usual, there are some moving parts. The injury report isn't quite as long today as it is on some other slates, but things are still very likely to change between now and lock, both in terms of player projections, ownership projections, leverage scores, all of that. So be sure to tune in to the deeper dive and live before lock, as always, from 5 p.m. Eastern up until tip at 7 p.m. Eastern for more up-to-date information. But for now, taking a look at 5 of the top tournament options on FanDuel. Starting at number 5, Wendell Carter Jr., power forward and center eligible, projected for 18% ownership with a 22% chance of being in the optimal lineup. Carter is only $6,800. He's averaged 1.1 FanDuel points per minute this season. The Magic have a difficult, pretty unappealing matchup at the Denver Nuggets, but they still have a 107 implied total, which isn't high, but it's not horrible. We'll certainly, we've seen lower at plenty of times this year. And Wendell Carter is a good fantasy point per minute guy. So as long as the Magic are able to keep this game somewhat competitive, you're likely to get around 30 minutes from Carter. He's cheap. He has multi-position eligibility. And while he is popular, he is projected to be a little bit underowned. Number 4, Mo Bamba, the other starting front court member of the Orlando Magic. He's only $4,800, projected for 9% ownership with a 14% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He's center only. He's averaged 1.07 FanDuel points per minute this season. And there are some risks with Bamba here. Not only do you have the unappealing matchup against the Nuggets, as mentioned before with Carter, but Bamba's minutes have been pretty volatile lately as well, in part because Orlando does get blown out relatively frequently, but you've also just seen rotations where Bamba doesn't play quite as many minutes as we would like from a DFS standpoint, but that has also helped to lower his salary, and it makes it so the ownership people aren't as confident going to him because while there is a ceiling, you're taking on pretty substantial risk that for one reason or another, Bamba only plays 22 minutes and that you kind of wasted your center spot, at least to some extent. But the flip side to that is Bamba is a very good point per minute fantasy point producer. He's not getting much ownership. If you happen to get a 26-minute game from Mo Bamba, he's very likely to pay off his salary quite nicely. Number 3, Andre Drummond, projected for 6% ownership with a 10% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He's $6,000. This is one spot that I think we're going to really have to pay close attention to throughout the day because right now we don't have any confirmation really on what Brooklyn's front court rotation is going to look like. We know that we're expecting Drummond to play tonight, and LaMarcus Aldridge is not on the injury report. Nick Claxton is not on the injury report. So realistically, any of those 3 guys could start at center tonight for the Nets. My assumption right now is that it's going to be Drummond. If it is confirmed that Drummond is starting for the Nets, I do think the 6% ownership increases, but I also think his projection would increase, which in turn increases the 10% chance of him being in the optimal lineup. One reason I like Drummond here, despite the uncertainty in playing time, is that thinking about what the Nets have available right now, you need someone that can at least do a little bit of creating and can score in addition to rebounding, and Drummond can do all of that. Marcus Aldridge certainly can score as well. Nick Claxton, I think, is a little bit less useful on this current version of the Nets where they're missing Durant, where they're missing Simmons, but also missing Kyrie Irving, because Claxton's not a high usage guy at all. He's not really scoring on his own. He's not getting his own shots. He's basically just rebounding and catching lobs at the rim. And you have a Nets team right now that is really missing a lot of offensive firepower. So I think it's likely that Drummond starts. It wouldn't surprise me if you see the center minutes simply split between Drummond and Aldridge and Claxton DNPs maybe. The worst case scenario, I guess, is Drummond starts, but you still get something like 20 minutes for Drummond, 16 for Aldridge, 12 for Claxton. Certainly a risk that you're taking. But anytime we get uncertainty here, a player with a new team like Drummond is, you do tend to see people kind of shy away from going there. So I think that even if the ownership does come up a bit, it's likely that he ends up being underowned relative to his chances of success. And Drummond has averaged 1.32 FanDuel points per minute this season while he was with the Sixers. So this is someone that for whatever minutes he's on the floor, we should expect to produce at a very high rate, especially in a favorable matchup against the Sacramento Kings. Number 2, Steph Curry is projected for 9% ownership, 14% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He's $9,700. Curry's difficult to trust at a relatively expensive price tag because he's relatively scoring dependent. He does have about a 35% assist percentage in the games that he's played with Klay Thompson, 28.5% usage rate. He's averaged 1.29 FanDuel points per minute. But when you talk about players that are near $10,000, typically you get a little bit more in terms of rebounding. A lot of these guys have higher usage rates as well. So it does make Curry very risky, but at the same time, he has a favorable matchup against the Clippers. We know that they are extremely shorthanded, missing Kawhi Leonard, missing Paul George, now also missing Norman Powell. You could certainly just see Steph come in here and light it up in LA, and he's not projected for much ownership. And number one, CJ McCollum, projected for only 4% ownership with a 10% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He is shooting guard only at $7,800. McCollum doesn't have the most appealing matchup against the Toronto Raptors. The Pelicans have a decent 109 implied total, but nothing special there. But I think we kind of have to be really encouraged by what we've seen from CJ McCollum in his first couple of games with the Pelicans. Not only has he played a lot of minutes, logging about 37 minutes in his first game and 36 in the second, but he's been extremely involved from the get-go. He's averaged 1.12 DraftKings points, or sorry, FanDuel points per minute in those first games, first two games, has a 32.9% usage rate, a 24.4% assist percentage. Now, I'm not suggesting that McCollum just maintains those rates for the rest of the season. He does still have to contend with Brandon Ingram for touches. He has to contend with Jonas Valanciunas for usage, but it's good to see that McCollum has just immediately stepped in here, taken on a huge role, both as a scorer and as a playmaker for this team. He's producing at a rate very similar to what he was doing in Portland through those first couple of games, and his rates are actually higher. At least his usage rate is actually higher than it was in Portland. So I am interested in McCollum for as long as, one, he keeps playing huge minutes and being the focal point of the offense, and two, if people aren't going to go there, and he's 4% owned, I love the upside that he offers. So to recap, the top 5 tournament options on FanDuel as things currently stand: number 5, Wendell Carter Jr., number 4, Mo Bamba, number 3, Andre Drummond, number 2, Stephen Curry, and number 1, CJ McCollum.